Good evening, everyone. It's now 5:34 and time to begin the 6th of May 2021 Historic Landmark Commission. I, Mike Vella, Vice Chair of the Historic Landmark Commission, hereby determine that conducting public meetings at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. Due to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, social distancing requirements, I find that conducting a meeting at the anchor location constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at this location. Just a quick preamble. The Historic Landmark Commission is made up of citizens of the city who are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Commission's primary has three things that are our duties. The first, to make recommendations to the city council on policies and ordinances related to preservation in Salt Lake City. This includes the designation of local historic districts and landmark sites. Two, as a certified local government, provide input to the Utah State Historic Preservation Office regarding National Registry nominations within the city. And three, we're also charged with reviewing and making decisions on land use applications for properties that are located within the Historic Preservation Overlay District. This includes design review of new building alterations, demolitions, economic hardship requests, construction of new buildings, special exceptions, and historic building relocation.
Wonderful. Do you mind if I make an announcement one more time and then have Aubrey take down the screen?
Certainly.
Wonderful. Well, welcome again to the Historic Landmark Commission. It's a beautiful evening in Salt Lake City. We'd love to have you join this meeting. If you're watching on channel 17, you can go to our Historic Landmark Commission agenda page and you can join this WebEx meeting. If you need help joining, and you're new to electronic meetings, we also have a step-by-step instruction guide. If you're sending in comments and you have to pop off, I'd be happy to read your comments into the record this evening. Please just specify which item you'd like me. It may be obvious, but it would be helpful. Or if you need any other help, we will be looking at our email throughout the meeting. Please email us at historiclandmarks.comments@slcgov.com. If you're in the attendees list, and it looks like we have a number of folks joining us, please, can you move to advance to the next screen, please, Aubrey? There's a tiny little hand. I wish WebEx would make it bigger, but you can see right down there, there's a tiny little hand in your lower right-hand corner. Please, please hit that button so I know that you want to speak to an item. Thank you.
Very good. I believe the next order of business is approval of the minutes of the 1st of April 2021 meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Very good. And it appeared to be seconded as well by David Richardson. All those approving? Aye.
Commissioner Ma, aye.
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 Very good. Next, we'll have the chair is traveling this evening, so he has no report, and as vice chair, I have no report either. Next, we'll turn to the director's report.
I have a couple things to report on. The first one is I'd like to welcome Hannah Vickery. Hannah, I don't know if you have your camera on, but she's one of our newest land use attorneys at Salt Lake City. She used to be with South Salt Lake. She has tons of municipal experience and she helps us every single day. We're very happy to have her. So you will see Hannah more at our commission meetings. Just a shout out to her. Hello. And I'd also regrettably have to announce and thank Jessica for being on the Historic Landmark Commission, but she is making a move and tonight is her last night. Jessica, on behalf of Salt Lake City Planning, thank you so much for lending your expertise to the commission. I've loved working with you. Super sad to see you go. But on to your next adventure.
Thank you, Michaela. I appreciate that.
Yes, I'd like to echo that as well. Sorry to see you leave, Jessica, but I understand that you're making a move, and good luck to you. All right, I believe it's time now to open public comments. The commission will hear public comments not pertaining to items listed on the agenda this evening.
Yes, I have a public comment from Cindy Cromer. Cindy, I'm unmuting you.
Thank you. The earlier schedule, a projected schedule, had the Elks Building potentially on your agenda at the May meeting. I'm going to begin my comments tonight anyway. When you held a work session regarding the project at your last meeting, Commissioner DeLay suggested separating the proposal into the portions that the commission could support and issues upon which there were not agreement. As she said, the Planning Commission had done with the City Creek Center years ago. Commissioner DeLay's suggestion was constructive and accurate. It was also the catalyst for my own recognition that the Landmarks Commission was dealing with the same relentless resistance that I had observed during the approval of the City Creek Center. The approval process for the City Creek Center went on for a year. I probably attended every public discussion. At the end of it all, I said to the members of the City Council, this is less bad. It wasn't as good as it could have been or should have been. The process wasn't so much consensus as it was erosion. The second train of thought I had comes from former Commissioner Polly Hart, who had a guideline regarding alterations stemming from her days in grad school. If the original designers would not recognize their own work, then the proposed changes had crossed the line. I am arguing that if Scott and Welch were standing on the sidewalk on South Temple, they would not recognize their own design. Certainly, if they viewed their building from the upper floors of a nearby building, they would make the connection. But from the sidewalk looking straight at the building, the structure is so radically different as proposed that I believe they would not recognize it as their own work. What I have been observing at your work sessions about the Elks Building is very similar to the process with the City Creek Center. Resistance to feedback, my way or the highway, from the developer who is admittedly the most powerful developer in the state. I have watched this wrestling match before at the City Creek Center. That project is less bad than it would have been without the input from the planning staff, the planning commission, and the public, but is certainly not as good as it could have been, and South Temple deserves the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Wonderful. And Greg Walters, you have your hand up, but I know that you want to speak to the Almond project. I'm just going to unmute you. Do you have a general comment, or can we hear your comments, please, during the Almond Street project?
We can, yes, that's fine.
Okay,
wait.
wonderful.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to call on you. Thank you.
Michaela, are there additional comments? Public hearing comments?
I don't see any other hands up. Thank you.
All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comments portion of this and move into the agenda. Barbara, can you pull that up, please, on the screen?
I'm sorry, what did you want me to pull up?
The agenda? If not, I have it in front of me as well.
I'm not currently able to share my screen.
All right, I can begin. I believe the first item on the public hearing is Salisbury Mansion at approximately 574 East, 100 South.
I'm the planner for that project, and I'll be happy to start my presentation. This is Katya Pace. I'm one of the planners in Salt Lake City for the people who are new. And I'll begin by sharing my screen with my PowerPoint presentation. So this project is an addition to the Salisbury Mansion, which is a Salt Lake City landmark and a contributing structure in the Central City Historic District. This is a request for a certificate of appropriateness. It's to change the original approval from the Historic Landmark Commission to construct an addition to the Salisbury Mansion. The original approval was given in November of 2017, and other amendments were approved administratively since the initial original approval in 2017. And this presentation will show these administrative approvals as well. So for this request, the commission will be looking at three changes. And the first one is to add an ADA ramp in the front of the facade of the main entrance of the mansion. The second one is to remove the proposed balcony on the east elevation of the addition. And the third is to add an elevator shaft on the rear of the proposed addition. So our recommendation, staff recommendation is that most of the changes are to be approved, the plans to the proposed addition. These changes affect the front facade and the east elevation where there's more visibility to the street view. And the proposed changes meet all the standards for the certificate of appropriateness for altering a landmark site. Sorry, Mike. Here.
Very good.
All right. So I'm gonna just explain a little bit more about those three proposed changes. And on the top picture, you can see is what was approved in 2017. And the bottom is the current proposal. So can you see my cursor? So the front entrance, when it was proposed in 2017, was in the middle of the corridor. If you see my cursor, I'm pointing at it. And what is being requested and proposed to change is that the main entrance be from the original an existing entrance to the mansion. In order to do that, these stairways here would be eliminated, and an ADA ramp would be attached right here, attached to the front porch. And the only change to the historic mansion would be to remove the railing on the original porch here. It would also change the pedestrian walkways. As you can see, this is where the ramp would be connecting to the porch, and this railing here would have to be removed. We found that the ADA ramp as being is how it is being proposed would retain the integrity of the building. Here's an illustration that shows what the original approval was, and how the current proposal would change some of the pedestrian walkways to accommodate, the ramp and the entrance. On the east elevation, the request is to remove a balcony. And as you can see, this is the balcony that was approved. And here's the current proposal without the balcony. And staff finds that this would make the addition and make the windows closer to the size and the design of the windows on the mansion. The third request is for an elevator shaft. And as you can see on the original approval, there was a third floor that was later removed with an amendment that was approved administratively. And so the original design had a third level, and now it's removed, and there's an elevator shaft, which is going to be installed approximately 30 feet from the face of the east elevation of the addition. So it will be barely visible from the street, if at all. So I wanted to show you, because there were so many changes that were done incrementally, I wanted to list all the approvals for this project, and wanted to show you go by each approval so you can see how it has evolved. So the first approval was in 2017, and the COA was issued based on the approval from the Historic Landmark Commission. Then in 2018, pretty much a year after that, there were amendments to that approval that were substantial, and the amendments were reflecting changes to the programming. For example, when this project was approved, there was going to be daycare, a children daycare, functioning together with this assisted living facility. And due to the removal of the daycare, requirements from building code and the financial situation of the project. There were some amendments, and I'll go over each one of them. Then in 2019, there was another certificate of appropriateness that was approved administratively, and that certificate of appropriateness was for site features that were not included in the first approval. And then subsequently, there was an amendment that was to include the transformer pad that was included, that was amended to this certificate of appropriateness from May of 2019. I would like to start, showing what was changed on that first amendment of 2018. And as you can see, this is the south elevation. It is the rear of the building. And most of the changes, and I'll start by removing some of the balconies, removing some windows, and then on the corridor, what was approved was just glass, but the applicant proposed to have brick on the back of the corridor, and which makes it a little bit more heat dynamic. Also changed the courtyard that was going to be in the on the back of the property, which was a feature for the daycare facility that was changed. Other windows removed. The third floor was removed, and more changes to windows mostly. The changes on the west elevation, which is a side elevation that's not going to be very visible from the street, was to remove the balconies, 8 balconies on this elevation. Changes to the east elevation was to remove 3 windows here, which now is being proposed to be there again, reinstituted. It would recess the building, and from just glass, it would be brick and glass. There would be a staircase that would access this entrance, and the last change was to retain the patio here on the side of the original building as is. The original approval was to extend that patio, but the amendment was to keep the patio as is. Staff found that by extending this entrance, it would review more of the original building, and also retaining more of the original building by maintaining this patio as is. For the north elevation, what was approved administratively was the removal of this balcony here on top of the entrance to the then proposed entrance to the facility. On the COA of the site features, let me just point out what the changes were. It's more like an addition. So right here on the east elevation, there would be a fence, wrought iron fence, a transformer that needed to be here, a garbage enclosure and a shed, a new stairways going to the entrance that was receded, a bike rack, window wells all over, and right here the ADA ramp was actually approved on the side of the building and not in the front of the building. The ADA ramp now is being proposed here on the front of the building. With that, I would like to ask the commission if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Since this is a proposal from a few years ago, well, 4 years ago now, and I haven't been by this area in a while. Is any of this work in progress, or is this still just being proposed?
It's being proposed as
It's
part of this.
Sorry, it's been boarded up for some time and is behind a fence. I haven't seen it. I drive by it every day, and nothing seems to have happened in a really long time.
Okay, thank you. I didn't think so. I just want to make sure.
Right. Right now, there is an addition from 1972 that the commission approved to be removed and then build, this more current addition that hasn't started being built. And I just wanted also to let you know that the reason for bringing it to the commission at this point is because the proposed changes would be on the north elevation and on the east elevation, which are a lot more visible from the street than the other elevations.
Very good. Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you, Katya. I believe it's time now for the applicant presentation of the proposal. And we have two applicants that may be speaking, James Christensen and Mark Katsuyamano.
I will let James present.
Okay, sorry, I was having issues there trying to get unmuted. This is James Christensen with Smith Hyde Architects. Needless to say, this project's been a long and winding road, and we've gone through many transitions working with the city and the state and everybody and the owner and his program trying to get it done. At this point, where this request for a certificate of appropriateness is so that we can move forward with the construction. The owner is ready to go. It's in for permit. This is kind of like one of our last little hurdles. As far as it goes, as far as design, as we were going through the program and trying to figure things out, it got to the point where we realized that we were kind of neglecting the historic building by having the entry on the connector, and it made more sense to have it front and center where people came in, where offices would be and everything. And so that's one of the reasons we're back here now asking for this change on the ADA ramp, so we can have, you know, the historic Salisbury Mansion be the centerpiece of the project. As far as the east side, the windows and the balcony, I don't see as a big issue. The penthouse, the elevator that Katja was talking about, is actually not for an elevator shaft. It's a stair tower at this point, and it's just basically for roof access. And we have, as you can see from her presentation, it's significantly smaller than what it was. Originally, we were using the attic of the existing building, but because of certain codes that don't allow, you know, 3 stories in a type 2 assisted living facility, we're no longer able to do that. And so the attic is just going to become kind of a mechanical space. And so we don't need the access or the elevator going all the way up. We just have the stair going to the roof. Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add, or?
No, I think nothing of significance, just a thanks to the commission. And, it's been such an arduous task to get this project to fit all the regulations. And we've been through so many designs. And Katja has been so wonderful to work with, helping us to sort of negotiate all the changes. So just a thanks to Katja for her help.
Very good. I think we now open to the public concerning any comments to what has been presented.
Good job.
I have Greg Walters, you have your hand up. Did you want to speak to this item?
No.
Greg, did you want to? Okay. No hands, Mr. Chair.
All right, very good. I think then it's time to, there's no other public comments, Michaela?
No other comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
fair enough. Very good. So so then we'll have the close of public comments. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Richardson here. I was on the commission when this was first approved, and if it's okay with you, I'd like to lead off with a little bit of historical perspective and my thoughts.
Certainly.
Okay, so there were a few iterations that this went through, and ultimately it came to us as 2 separate buildings connected by a very light interconnector, as we see today. And from a historical perspective, this is one of the best ways to connect a historical building with a new building. There were some proposals early on to use elements from the 1972 addition to the mortuary in the addition, and the applicant wisely chose to jettison that and focus on restoring the original mansion and creating a new addition to the side that read as separate buildings, separate teeth on the streetscape, as it were. Mansion was originally designed by the architect Frederick Hale, who's done many mansions around town, big projects, including the Alta Club and the Alta Club Edition. Mr. Hale has a wonderful pedigree in that era of architecture, and the current building, the current mansion, retains much of Mr. Hale's original design, and we are assuming that the intent of the remodel is to keep Mr. Hale's interior work, which is phenomenal, and enhance that. And by moving the ADA ramp to the front, by moving the entrance from the light glass addition in the courtyard to the front of the building, will in fact showcase architect Frederick Hale's work, and in my opinion is is the right thing to do. The original ADA ramp was a little more, I think, sophisticated in its approach, but the direction that this project is taking, that the applicant's taking, is it will be much better, I think, for the user experience and for showcasing Frederick Hale's work, which is as much on the exterior as it is on the interior. Personally, I think that the balcony is second fiddle and the elevator or staircase is third fiddle, and we're just bringing this all together into a lovely package, and I'm a little surprised it's come back to the commission, but I think this is a fabulous project, and I'm going to give a kudos to the applicant for maintaining the landscaping during the last 4 or 5 years. Thank you very much. You're going to have my approval here.
Very good.
I'd like to
Commissioners, any other
say,
comments? Certainly.
you know, I just want to say, I think all of this is a non-issue. I'm really glad they're going with ADA rules, since I was just with my very handicapped client and I'm a handicapped person. And I think we should go ahead and vote.
Babs, let it roll.
I'm trying to pull up the right, the motion sheet here. Hold on. I'm not as fast as I used to be. So let's see here.
Let's make something up.
All right. Regarding PLN HLC 2021-00308, motion to approve as proposed, consistent with a staff recommendation, by the way, based on the analysis and findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing. I move that we approve petition PLN HLC 2021-00308, a request for a certificate of appropriateness for minor alterations at the Salisbury Mansion, with the following direction. Number 1, approval of all final design details, including specific direction expressed by the commission, shall be delegated to planning staff. And I believe that's all I need to say.
Being unmuted, I second Commissioner DeLay's.
Very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote, please. I'm going to go in order of the list that I have. Babs,
He's muted.
Yes, approve.
John,
Yes.
Jessica,
Aye.
Victoria,
Aye.
and David.
Richardson, aye.
Very good. I believe this passes unanimously.
I think you missed
Already a
Aiden.
couple others are out there.
Hi, sorry. Aiden Lilly here. Yes.
Oh, excuse me, Aiden. I did not. I apologize.
It is okay. It took me a minute to log in. So I missed the
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you. And I take it that you're in approval as well?
Yes.
Very
Yes.
good. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, now going in order, I believe the next item, bear with me just a second, is the minor alteration located at approximately 229 North Almond Street. And I believe Katya, you're presenting on this one as well.
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen here with you. I apologize. I want to slideshow. Okay, begin. All right. So this is a project on 229 North Almond Street. It's located in the Capitol Hill Historic District. It's a contributing structure. This is a historic photo from 1935. It's not a very good photo, but it gives you an idea. The request is for a certificate of appropriateness. Just want to start off by saying that this is an enforcement case. A certificate of appropriateness was never issued, and the building permit was issued, but the drawings on the building permit don't match what was actually built. This is the plans that were approved and that are, as you will see, is different from what was built, including a dormer that was built on the roof. So our recommendation for this project is that staff finds that the proposed changes, except for the dormer, as listed on the staff report and demonstrated on this presentation, meet the standards for a certificate of appropriateness. However, the dormer, as proposed, is not subordinate to the roof and the scale of the home, and therefore staff finds that the dormer does not meet the standards for a certificate of appropriateness, either as it was built or is proposed right now. Here's a list of what is being requested to change from what was built in this renovation. I'm not going to read all the items right now. I will show that on my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'll come back to it. So these are the changes to the dormer that are being proposed. And staff finds that these changes are positive and are good changes that are being proposed. However, it's not enough that the roof at the dormer is still too wide for this home and should be reduced at the width. So here's a picture of the house before this renovation that started. This renovation started in 2019. Then it started enforcement in 2020. We received an application for a certificate of appropriateness, and it has been, we've been working with the applicant for several months on this. This is the north elevation, and this is where the dormer was built. This is the west elevation. Unfortunately, we don't have pictures of the west elevation before the renovation. So this is how it is right now. And I'll start with that list and just go item by item.
Tasha, Richardson here. Could you
Yeah.
flip could you flip back a couple slides to the pre-to-construction view that shows the addition? Awesome, thank you. I think I got it. Yeah, forward one again that shows the addition before renovations.
Oh,
Gotcha. Okay, thank you
Oh.
very much.
This one.
Yeah.
okay,
Try
this
that.
one? This one?
One more.
Okay,
One more.
The next one.
this one?
Yep, I got it.
That one.
Got it
Yeah.
registered. And interesting, look to the left and there's some excavation that has happened since. It's kind of interesting, but thank you, Kasha. We'll get on with this.
And let me explain that the excavation is for a driveway, but the applicant has decided to hold on to the driveway. There's some issues with needing a special exception because it would be a driveway on the front facade, but you know, there might be an alternative way of having the driveway not be on the front facade and not needing the special exception. So they're holding on to and not going forward requesting for the driveway. But it will have to be reviewed by, and it will need a certificate of appropriateness for the driveway in the future. So this is the, you know, and I'll start with the roof. The roof, you know, as part of the renovation, the roof was changed from asphalt shingles to asphalt shingles. And so there's no issues, and we propose, we recommend that the commission approve the roof replacement. Now the windows, as you can see, all of the windows were changed to vinyl windows, and in the dormer also it is vinyl. And let me show you just the exception were these windows in the basement that were there already, so there were no changes to that.
Katya,
Yes.
hello, how are you?
Hi, Deb. Good to see you.
When you were talking about the roof, the asphalt shingles were replaced, updated with newer asphalt shingles. You didn't mention the chimneys though.
No, and I will
Go back to that.
yeah, I
Okay.
have a slide just for the chimneys.
Okay, thank you.
So the windows, so all of the windows are vinyl right now. What the proposal is to change these three windows, three vinyl windows, to wood windows, double hung where it's appropriate, and change the front facade window on underneath the porch and then on the gable to wood windows, double hung windows. And let me show you a better picture of this. Sorry. Okay. Right here, you can see the window on the front facade, which has these hollands that, you know, inside the windows. And so, okay, sorry. So the proposal is to change the windows on the north and on the east elevation, and just keep the windows on the west and the south elevation because they're not as visible from the street. On the west elevation, they're not visible at all from the street. Our next slide is the doors. So there are two doors on this home, one on the front facade and one on the basement, which were doors that are out of period and they do not have nothing to do with the architectural style of this home. And the proposal is to change this front door window here to this salvage door that is that relates to the period of significance of this home and also the architectural style. And then the proposal does not say anything about does not proposes to change the basement window because it's not that visible from the street. The next proposal is the front gable. As you can see, during the renovation, they removed this barge board, this wood barge board that gives character to this property. And they replaced it with this fascia. And our recommendation is to remove this fascia and reinstall this barge board, this wood barge board with the same design to restore some of the character of this home. The next item is siding. They did something that was extremely good, which was to remove these asbestos shingles and review the circular shingles on the gable of the property, which this is original, and this drop novelty siding on the house. But there are two places that were installed. They installed vinyl siding. One is in the dormer, and one is on the rear of the home, on the addition on the rear. And so our recommendation is to replace where there's vinyl here in the dormer to a wood lap siding, and on this rear addition to replace the vinyl with cement fiber, which is what they used on the sides of this addition on the back. Here are the chimneys. They removed two of the chimneys. This chimney here, if there's a dormer here, there's no, this chimney is not going to be able to be reinstalled. And this second chimney, since it wouldn't be the original chimney, our recommendation is to approve just the removal of it without reinstating any of the chimneys. Then this is the part that we're recommending that the commission deny. It's the dormer. So this dormer, as is right now, as you can see, the pitch of this dormer does not relate at all with the pitch of the home. And with sliding windows, accentuating more of that, horizontal aspect of the dormer. And so we've been talking a lot about this dormer with the applicant, and they came up with, some alternative changes, which one is to make this dormer into a hip roof, which would relate to the hip roof of the porch.
Do you have a suggestion or a drawing of what that would look like?
Yes. So this shows that it would reduce the height of the dormer or the feel of the height.
Mhm.
And here is a rendering.
Kasha, that's a great drawing. Thank you. So the width of the dormer and the wall height remain unchanged. It's only the roof frame, the roof portion that changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then they're proposing to change, the material of the siding to wood lap, and changed the sliding windows with two vertical double hung windows on the dormer.
That kind of roof, you wouldn't be able to stand up as high when you're near the windows?
And here's here's what staff was requesting, to reduce the size of this dormer by reducing the width of the dormer. And our response from the applicant is that the dormer is necessary because of this new stairwell that they put in. They made this loft area habitable. It used to be just, attic space. And by changing the stairwell to a bigger stairwell, they made this area here the landing, and this is the area where the dormer is. So the width that they have is needed because of they also need room on both sides of the stairwell for movement to access the bedroom and access this living area here of the loft. So the applicant is saying that they wouldn't be able to reduce the width. So staff asked about actually changing the direction of the stairwell to actually having a landing under the original ridge of the roof. So, space to, headspace wouldn't be an issue. But the applicant says that they wouldn't be able to do that without restructuring the whole and re-engineering the whole stairwell and the footprint of the home. Here is showing a picture of the wall that is right here, and how oops, I don't know what I did. I apologize. Okay. So, this is the reason why we're here, and staff finds that the changes to the hip roof are positive changes, but it's still not enough. That the dormer should be reduced in the width to be more in scale and to be so subordinate to the home. So we're recommending denial of just the dormer, but recommending approval of the other items. And this is the end of my presentation, the last slide. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to to answer.
Katya, I have one. Could you go back, please, to, I think you had a floor plan of the original stair that accessed the this upper level?
Yeah. Let me get
I think it was like the second or third. There, yeah, there you go.
right here.
Oh, that worked. Look at that.
Can the architect in you explain this?
You know, in fact, the architectural drawings, this is Richardson speaking, the architectural drawings would suggest that a much smaller dormer would have worked wonderfully. Where the architectural drawings show 7 or 8 feet from the face of the stair to the wall. This is quite interesting. Thank you for showing this. And I'm sad that the architectural drawings were not part of our packet.
There is no architect working on this project.
What?
There wasn't an original architect on this project.
But there are drawings that are floating around. We're seeing pictures of, I mean, what we're seeing right now is like a SketchUp thing, but we're seeing pictures and snippets of architectural drawings as if they existed at some point in time.
Right. Okay, well, I'm confused, but isn't this also an example of asking forgiveness rather than permission?
As far as architectural drawings, I'll have the applicant and the owner of this project talk to you about architectural drawings, but these are the only drawings that we have received.
Okay. So Katya, I'm gonna go back to one thing here. If you would go back to the original plan, getting up to this level, and just make a comment. There, thank you. And I suspect that the rise and run of that stair, is, you know, that you know, it's very narrow. I get it, and the rise was probably in excess of 6 inches. It was probably 7.5, maybe, you know, plus or minus inches. And so it was a very steep, narrow stair, but very narrow to get in there. And if you compare the two drawings, the drawing on the left and count the risers, and the drawing on the right and count the risers, they're probably the same. The drawing on the right shows what is common, you know, an 11.5 inch tread, 6 inch riser. I get that. The original one, you know, that was demolished, it's a much narrower stair, and the rise is very steep. However, it's very narrow, and you can see the landing space is generous. And so if a dormer were placed, you know, in that location, you know, it would be a significantly different look. That's just a statement so that, you know, Babs and others, does that make sense what I just said?
Mike Richardson here, that makes total sense. And in fact, if you look at the distance from the original stair to the original wall and the distance from the new stair to the original wall, it would beg the question, why is a dormer necessary at all? So perhaps that question will unfold as the applicant.
Fair enough. No, I understood. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to drive that home. That what the stair that was there worked according to the, you know, to the you know, the codes and regulations back then. They wouldn't today, but once it's moved, that's what, you know, the second stair, you know, the one that's shown here, that's the resultant. So anyway,
Yeah,
I
great.
believe.
Thank you, Mike.
I would actually like to add to that. The Utah State Code states that it's an 8 rise and a 9 run, you know, 9-inch tread. And I think that part of the reason why that was adopted was because it was sort of taken into account some of these existing homes and being able to work around that. I'm just kind of maybe speculating a little bit, but the fact is though, is going back to the comment about those stairs being generous, understood for comfort level, we would all love to have a 7-Eleven rise and run. This is generous, considering what the code is.
Right. I mean, and Jessica, you're absolutely correct. I live in a 111-year-old house, and our stairs to the attic now are probably 7.5, 8 inches. And I have to walk sideways because they're not even close to 11. They're closer to maybe a 9-inch tread, plus or minus.
Ouch.
Katya, so
To that observation, an 8-inch rise, actually a 7 and 7/8 inch rise in a 9-inch tread are available to designers in the residential building code.
Correct.
In IRC. So steep stairs are out there. They're steep to us, but not of people to antiquity or.
And the state code regarding stairs is actually overriding the IRC. There was actually a Utah state amendment that overrides what the IRC says.
And then the state amendment, to Michaela's point, and Salt Lake City Housing Code are a little more liberal. But I think the issue to point here is the size of this dormer, and let's see what the applicant has to say about it.
Can I interject?
Victoria has a question.
Katya, I see that this is an approved building permit. Had this application included seeking permission for a dormer, would they have been referred to HLC at that time? Is there a reason why building permits were allowed? Was it because it was all internal work being done?
So yeah, the building permit was approved for work done on the internal part of the home. At this point, there were no dormers, so certificate of appropriateness was not necessary except for replacing windows, materials, siding. All of the other stuff would have, required a certificate of appropriateness, but not the changes internally, because it wouldn't affect the exterior of the building.
I just want to be clear from the city's point of view that this wasn't flagged up when the building permit came in because these items weren't on the permit. And so we never got flagged, come to the commission. I know that Carl Leaf did go out to the property at one point. I'm muting those who are unmuted because of feedback.
Thank you, Michaela. And Katya, that's what I was wondering, because we haven't seen this before, and it's because we have a building permit that doesn't reflect the reality at all of what was built on a historic property.
Correct.
Very good. Well, we've heard from Katya and commissioners. Any other questions or comments? If not, let's hear from the applicant, please.
Hello, I am Maylee Nelson. This is my husband, Mitch Nelson.
Hello.
We are the owners of Almond Street. Just to kind of give a little bit of backstory, and hopefully in your packet you saw a little bit of our story. But when we took this project on almost 2 years ago, we had every intention to follow the historical, recommendations throughout the entire process. This is not our first rodeo. We have worked with the historical not necessarily Salt Lake, but Ogden multiple times. So we knew that this was something we had to do along the entire way. However, we hired a contractor that 8 months into the project decided that he actually split ways with the contractor that had the license, and he stopped pulling permits and stopped the process of getting the approval from the historical ledger.
Without letting us know.
Without letting us know. And all of this was what we thought, every step of the way, it was just getting, sent through, and it was just getting, check, 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 no big deal, no big deal. And then all of a sudden we call Katya and go, well, why do we have this, non-compliance essentially? And well, obviously news to us, she said, well, it's all wrong. I'm like, oh no. So we panicked. It was not built to our original plans. So we did have original plans, and I'm sorry that wasn't submitted in your packet. Our original plans, the dormer was not necessary at all, actually, the way we had it originally designed and how we had it structured. It was actually up against the wall where the stairs were, and they would turn and come up. I don't exactly know why he chose to do that. It is a beautiful design. If you ever do go inside the home, you'll be like, wow, it is absolutely astonishing and so beautiful. However, I understand that it is not to the historical, requirements, and I'm very sad about that. So obviously we are willing to do whatever it takes. Our request at this time is just simply not make us change the entire staircase. So it was a $25,000 staircase, and it is gorgeous. It is hand built. It's custom steel and almond wood that is the staircase. So to restructure that entire it would have to restructure the entire layout. Also, I just want to say there was no stairs going upstairs at all originally. So there was no stairs going downstairs, and there was no stairs going upstairs. So there's 3 levels, and there's no way to get to either of them. We had to tear it down to the studs. It was a $350,000 remodel. It was a lot, like the biggest project we've ever taken on still today. So that's the biggest thing, is we're absolutely willing to do whatever it takes to fix the things that need to be fixed. And we already agreed to, the siding, and of course, all that needs to be fixed, right? That's an obvious, but it's just the fact that, can we just fix, right, our proposal, what we submitted? That's what we're requesting. Anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, so in the original drawings where it showed stairs, that was actually a ladder. It was like rough cut timber ladder that led to the attic. So it wasn't going to work as far as accessibility to the attic as a living space. As far as the permits and working with the Historic Landmark Society, that our instructions to our contractor when we hired him was to pull all the permits and to be in compliance, with the Historic Landmark Commission's requirements. It wasn't until about the time that we came and there was a dormer on the roof that we realized that something was wrong. We took action and let him go and change directions, and you've been working with Katya, who's been amazing, by the way.
Amazing.
So thank you to Katya. But we've been working to try to correct what's been going on. We're happy to do everything. We're asking for special permission to do the hip roof on the dormer, simply because of the cost of ultimately, to restructure the entire home and change the staircase. We're approaching $100,000, and at that point, it's an abandonment of the project. So we understand that it wasn't followed. We're sharing with you that our intentions were to follow the guidelines from the beginning, but they weren't followed by the contractor, unfortunately. So we want to fix it as much as possible, and we're appealing to your humanity and your, and asking for this one exception on the dormer.
This home is already under contract for sale. So before we knew that all these problems were happening, it was done as far as I thought. I'm like, oh, perfect. All we needed is the driveway. Let's put it under contract. No big deal. So we also have the new buyers and the new homeowners on the line. Also, I don't know if they wanted to share kind of their thoughts and what they're thinking, but he is also a historian, and he, I think, proposed and sent with the packet just a lot of dormers that are in the area. And when we did drive around and look at a bunch of dormers, there's a lot that are the same. Anyway, that's the same. Yeah. So that's obviously your guys' decision, but it doesn't look that bad. I mean, it looks great if you look at it. I don't know. I'm not a historian though. So.
Thank you for the time.
Very good. Let's open up the public hearing portion. If there's any comments, Michaela, or are there anyone in the waiting room?
I I'm assuming everyone in the attendees list. I see some hands popping up, so let's start with Gregory. Greg, you are unmuted. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Greg Walters. I am one of the prospective buyers of the property on Almond Street. We've been under contract with this home for 2 months and it's kind of dragged on a little bit. We're currently just about to close on the sale of our current home. We live in Salt Lake City in the East Central Bryant neighborhood. We've been there for 13 years. We're looking to expand a little bit into a bigger space. As we have 2 grown children now. I just wanted to speak to show my support for the proposed plan for the dormer. As it looks now with the peaked roof, there's no continuity with the design. And I think, although the dormer is still too big in regards to what the city is saying, I think that the hipped roof and the update to the materials would tie together the character of this home. Over the past few weeks, my husband and I have been wandering around the neighborhood, the Capitol neighborhood, and we've seen a lot of examples that don't entirely look like they should be there, but are. So we're thinking with this proposal, it does maintain some of the character that should be present in this property. We can't obviously speak for and apologize on behalf of the current owners, but as a hopeful future owner of this property for decades to come, you know, we as the proposed owners can promise you that we will do nothing to undermine the efforts and standards set forth by this committee, and we hope that you'll give us a chance to prove that. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was like a perfect 2 minutes, Greg. Okay. Tyson Clay, I'm unmuting you. Tyson?
Hi, thanks for letting me comment. I just have a question for the committee. Have any of you taken the time, because I know that being there helps to understand, have any of you taken the time to go to the property and walk the property yourselves?
Yes, Tyson, absolutely. And as part of this discussion, you're supposed to tell us not only who you are, but what your residence address is.
Like where I live in the county?
Or in Salt Lake City, or
Yes, sir.
Yeah, where we would mail you a letter.
Okay.
It's for the record, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Tyson Clay. I'm involved in this project as a lender, and I live at 4897 West Calton Lane, Calton, in South Jordan, Utah.
Thank you, Tyson. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. And so
Tyson, are you finished or would you like to continue, sir?
I was just asking if any of you had taken the time to go to the property and walk it so you can see what it's like inside. That's all.
You know, that's what we do on this committee, is that when we're presented with these items, that on our own time, we visit them, and we even have special stinking badges that tell people we are with the Historic Landmarks Commission, so that people don't shoot us when we are walking around properties. So it is perfect
Right.
protocol that we do this every time. Thank you.
Right. And Tyson, I'll echo that. That's exactly what we do. And I have visited this. I always start off with a Google search to see if I know the property. I did not know this property, and that's why I drove to look and see, drove around the neighborhood just a bit. So yes, indeed, we did that.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Dennis? Monica, would you like to speak to this matter?
Sure. I'm unmuted. I don't have much to say beyond just echoing the sentiment that Gregory shared with all of you. I am their realtor, so I've helped them in the purchasing process. And I know that they are under contract to sell the current home they're in, so it would be devastating to them if this property isn't approved. And like Gregory said, we can't offer, apologies for the sellers themselves, but it is a case where I think begging for forgiveness because permission wasn't seeked is what we're doing. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed that you would be willing to consider a roof modification instead of width modification so that they will be able to call this their new home. And thank you so much.
And Monica, what is your address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I live downtown at 342 South, Strong's Court.
Oh, that's a great spot.
It's such a fun little spot, yeah.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Are you finished? Okay, thank you. And for all the other attendees, please state your name and your address at the beginning. Lori Kalis. Lori, I'm unmuting you.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is Lori Kalis. I'm one of the investors. I live at 4512 West Meadow Bend Drive in Harriman, Utah. And I just wanted to mention that Mitch and Maley Nelson, the owners, they did hire a contractor who had done extensive work on other historical landmark buildings. And the contractor had done a beautiful, wonderful job. So they had every reason to trust him to follow the historical requirements for this home on Almond. So I just wanted to mention that, and that it was just very sad when they found out what had really happened. That he split ways with his partner, who was the licensed one, and did not tell them. And so they thought that he was continuing to pull the permits like he did in the very beginning of the project. Yeah, very sad for all of us because this has gone on way, way longer than we anticipated. So therefore, the profit is just going away for all of us involved. And it's just been a really devastating thing.
And then,
So we would hope that this exception for the dormer can be accepted.
And if I could just jump in, my name is Daniel Grillone. I'm Lori's husband. We live at 4512 West Meadow Bend Drive in Harriman. And I just thought I'd say, I mean, I think the gist of our piping in would be to say that, I'm sure along the way there's different situations that come up where people make a plea to you as a council and a committee. And I just wanted to say that as a kid, I grew up in the avenues and I used to ride those streets as a young kid. I've been up and down probably every one of those streets numerous times on my bike. And when I saw the house done, it just took me back. It brought back a lot of the thoughts of what the houses look like there. And I really think it's beautiful. I just would like to make a plea that you would make an exception under the circumstances, and realizing that, not being able to go in to talk to you folks because of COVID, that's a whole different ballgame. But the delay has been, pretty devastating. And there's been a lot of homes in that area that have had changes. And I think it's probably fair to say that not every one of them are spot on. And the fact that this is done, it would be very much appreciated if you could put yourself in our shoes. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Michaela, you're muted now.
Lon Anderson, thank you.
Was there more?
Would you state your name and your address for the record? You have 2 minutes. Lon?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I too, my name is Lan Anderson. I live at 4925 Ghost Dance Circle. That's in Las Vegas, Nevada, 89149. I too have a vested interest in this property as I've partnered with Mitch and his wife. And I too just support those things that have been discussed with others today. I believe that the changes still enhance the property's appearance without distracting from its historical significance. And I appreciate your time, your consideration in this. Thank you.
Cleet Johannesson, I'm unmuting you. Cleet, you have
Yeah.
2 minutes. Can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, Cleet Johansson, 352 South, 900 East, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84102.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we shouldn't have, but we fell in love with this property. And even more so when we read the history of it in that staff report, it was great. And despite all the travails we've been through just to get to this point, and whatever comes after this, we still, excuse me, feel that the house was meant for us and for our family. And so we came to speak for it. Thanks for allowing us to be here and participate.
Thank you. Okay, Cindy Cromer. Cindy, I've unmuted you.
I didn't have a comment on this one.
Okay.
Michaela?
That is all. That is all that I have, and I'm just checking to see if any emails came in. I do not see any emails to read into the record.
Michaela, can I
Yeah.
ask, well, just something here. By the way, I think it's rather ironic that the view that I see of you, it looks like you're sitting in a very tight dormer.
I'm actually standing up because I sit too much. So that's why.
Okay. Looks like
That's why it looks that way.
And it looks like you're gonna hit your head. There's an interesting letter that was received that hasn't been mentioned here from attorney Kelly Fowler, who stated that he's glad the owners have agreed to replace the windows, because who puts vinyl windows in the avenues? We all know better. The front door, which doesn't match the age of the property. It's more like mid-century modern on this. Restore the gable trim, nice, and ditch the vinyl siding, good. The dormer's a tough one. And then he comments, these are not newbie investors. They teach classes, they offer paid subscriptions for their instructive videos and have a YouTube channel on real estate investing. Maybe they weren't used to dealing with historic homes or aware a COA would be required, but the city rep asked them point blank if they'd be working on the exterior, and they lied and said no. In the video, they complain about the city and the money its delays have cost them. The house definitely looks better than before, and I'm sure the new buyers would be a great addition to the neighborhood, but the Historic Commission exists for a reason. If there aren't any consequences, what are these folks teaching their followers? As far as alternative solutions to shrink the size of that dormer, perhaps the stairs could be reconfigured. We discussed that. Beginning at the end and blah, blah, blah. That could allow the dormer to be reduced to about 9 feet or even 6 feet if access to the area between the stairs and the dormer windows isn't an issue. Going on to say he doesn't envy you or the new buyers in this situation. Have they been given a COA in this particular case? And if we did require the dormer to be changed, the lender is here listening in. Could they put that money in escrow and still close on the transaction?
Babs, thank you for reading. This is Richardson speaking. Thank you for reading that into the minutes. And are we in executive session?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, I don't.
Actually, would it not be fair to give the applicants a chance to respond to that? Because the contention is that all of this information was known well in advance at, potentially at the point of permitting, and was recorded and published for all of us to see, including dissatisfaction with the process. So I would like to hear, my heart goes out to you on having retained someone who did not do what he said he would, but I'm really struggling with this. And as someone who is not an architect, as someone who has very steep stairs in her 1941 house, as someone who doesn't have the luxury of $25,000 staircases, as someone who wants to advocate for the complete protection of Salt Lake history, I would like to know what your answer is for the apparent flippant publication of your reaction to the city processes in advance of the creation of this dormer.
If I may add to that, Victoria, I am having heartburn. I think is sort of obviously not in our purview, but just in the general challenges of the housing market in Salt Lake City, that we have investors that are coming in here that are, sort of like, I think it's been said a number of times, asking for forgiveness rather than getting permission, especially where it's also been stated a couple of times, these are folks that apparently have worked on historic properties, but yet have done things that go against the city's guidelines. So I second you on that.
Not meaning to be rude, and everything everybody just said was very valid, but I still had two questions. And one was about the certificate of occupancy there, which I'd like to hear. And then also, if the lender could speak up about closing with an escrow.
I can tell you that a certificate of occupancy has not been issued.
Why don't we have the applicant? Would you like to speak? You have a chance to respond or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
So the a few areas of those comments came from, and they weren't intended to be flippant. So we apologize that it came across that way. The contractor that we hired, in addition to all the problems that we have, our initial instructions to them were get the permits from the building department and work with the historical society to make sure that this is to code. Those were in fact, we hired him specifically because of that. Like Maylee said, we usually do projects that are more cosmetic in nature, that don't require such scope in structure, that don't require architectural plans. We're talking paint, carpet, appliances, granite, those types of things. So that's kind of our bread and butter as far as fix and flips go. And the relationships that we had at the time didn't include anybody that could handle the amount of permitting process and the due process with the Historical Society. And that's why we hired this contractor in the first place, with those specific instructions. He originally told us 9 months to complete construction. We're going on, I think, 26 months, and things still aren't resolved. And his consistent response to the time delay was, "It's the city, it's the city, it's the city." So it wasn't intended as an attack on the city. It was more our videos that we put out are intended to be entertaining, but also somewhat educational and really give people just kind of a window into the process. That was the information that we had received from the person that we had hired.
We actually never talked to any of you guys. We didn't talk to Katya. We didn't talk to anyone.
Yeah, we didn't talk to any of you personally until we received that. What's the name of the document? Notice of noncompliance? Is that what it's called? So, it's it's been a learning process for sure. Our instructions were not followed. The frustration that was expressed was inappropriate, and I apologize for it because the nature of it was third party. That's what we were being told from the contractor.
Can you also comment on the fact that these exterior modifications were referenced before they were completed? According to what correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm hearing from what you told us, is that there wasn't a need for a dormer initially, or that it wasn't going to be that big or something. But in the recording that you published, you're referencing these exterior modifications that were not included from what I can see in that original permit.
Victoria, may I also add to that question? I think this is a pertinent question. Is at any point, I feel like this isn't your first rodeo, that you should understand that a dormer, I'm thinking honestly, should have, engineering plans as well, structural engineering. So, if you have been through this before, should that not have been a red flag as well to have, caused some sort of moment to step back and say, we really need to reevaluate this, but instead you just push forward?
Yeah, like I said, our experience is more in cosmetic flips. We hired this person because of their experience and their ability to and experience in working with the city. And so there was a level of misplaced trust. Now, as far as the question about knowing ahead of time, so when we were told that there needs to be a dormer, I accepted it. I mean, he obviously added cost in the construction value because he's got to add a dormer now. But the communication he never told us that he wasn't going to pull permits for it, or that he wasn't going to get it approved by the Historical Society. Based on our original agreement and our original contract, we had put trust in him that he was going to do what he agreed to do from the beginning, and that wasn't done.
And part of it was hard
May I ask a
because when we
question?
would go and see the property, everything looked great, and he said, part of it was Danny would go, well, the city made us put this steel beam in that cost us, an abnormal amount. And I thought, why do we need a steel beam there? Multiple different things he would tell us it was necessary because the city and was requiring things. So to our understanding, it was like, oh, okay, well, clearly he's communicating, right? Clearly he's following the rules that is necessary to make this a beautiful home, but also historical, right? And follow those rules.
Victoria, do you feel like you're...
Richardson
I-
has a question
sorry.
after Victoria's
Ms.
done.
Petro Essler, you had asked, made the comment that we knew along the way in the recorded video on our YouTube channel. If you go back and look at the age of the channel, our oldest video is about 3-4 months old. And this particular property was our second video. So it's only about 3 months old. This has been since we, about the time that we actually fired the contractor about 3 months ago. Most of that, the conversations that we had, that we filmed, they were staged and recorded within 2 weeks of posting that video. It was more just to kind of set the stage and stay with the thematic attitude of the channel. So it wasn't known at the time. It was known later that that was out of compliance.
Well, okay, now there's some free air. Richardson here, Commissioner. And I think we should really move this to executive session. But I would like to make the observation and allow the applicant to respond to this before we go to executive session. In that, according to the Salt Lake City website, the original permit was pulled in April of 2019, and the permit is still under that contractor. So if this contractor has been fired, I find it curious that the permit is still under this supposed itinerant contractor's name.
I agree.
And no,
We
this
actually
is something
have-
that owners can deal with, and particularly savvy owners would know how to deal with. And furthermore, savvy owners would do this prior to a meeting like we're having today. So.
Okay. No, that's helpful.
This permit was pulled in 2019, April. That was 2 years ago. To your point, it's expensive to carry properties, but it's also, challenge to be in a situation like this. So.
Yeah. No, we
Can I
do
just
have-
ask? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to mention, we do have our current contractor who replaced the contractor we've been referring to, that's working to make these changes, like I said, we want to comply with everything that we can. So
The new door has been put on, the windows have been ordered, the siding has been ordered, like everything's ready to go to make this happen.
Right. And I get that. A handyman can replace the door. But the permit is still under the original contractor's name, in the original owner's name, and all of that. So from the perspective of this commission, we're dealing with that information.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Steve Clayton. Currently the new contractor, live at 11741 South Sunnystone Drive in South Jordan, Utah. I did actually contact the city to try to switch the permit over to my name. As far as I knew, that had been handled. So if it's still showing that it's in the old contractor's name, I'll have to get a hold of them again. Because I did call them and filled out the stuff that they gave me online and submitted it. So I don't know why it has not been switched over.
Steve, I think that involves some paperwork that has to be notarized and so on. So
Yes.
it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
And also at that, in any job, the permit needs to be displayed on site, and as a licensed general contractor, you should have those papers on site that have your information on them. I would assume is the way that this process works.
Yeah, that's what
and
I.
Jessica, to your point, there was no permit in the window when I visited in the last 48 hours.
Me neither. Also, before we go into executive session, last time, just to clarify with the lender and the owners of the property, we don't have a certificate of occupancy, but would the lender close if a certificate of occupancy could be granted with the dormer to be changed, fixed within a few months, like in an escrow account? Would the city work with the lender that way?
I have to unmute the lender, but I can't remember which attendee was the lender. Maylee, which attendee is your lender?
So everyone who spoke up, Tyson Clay, I think is who you're referring to, but he's actually a partner. So he brought some money to the table to work on this project with us. So he's not the lender for the new buyers.
Monica,
as
do
a
you have
clarification.
the lender on here?
We have Tyson, Monica, Lori. Do you know who your lender is?
For the buyer.
For the buyer, yeah, I wouldn't.
For the buyer.
know.
Monica, are you the lender for the buyer?
No,
No.
I'm the buyer's agent. I do know who
Okay.
their lender is.
Who's the lender?
Is not,
The
her name
lender's
is
not on the
Charlotte.
line.
She's
No.
not attending this meeting, no.
They're not on, it's apparent
Okay.
they're not here.
Okay,
So
great.
wait, so the lender's not here. So the question, I'm going to go back to Katya. Katya, explain here, if we did require something change with the dormer and the certificate of occupancy, how would that work?
I can help with that too, Kosh, if you're not sure.
That'd be great. Yeah, help me
Okay.
understand the
Michaela,
process.
you probably have more experience with that and can answer better than I can.
Yes, one can buy a property under enforcement if their lender allows them to do it and they own that enforcement situation. If the certificate of non-compliance isn't caught by the lender, and there's not you know, they don't get in there, as you know, yes, that can transfer over.
Okay,
So basically, buyer beware,
yeah, all right.
as
Thank
you know.
Yep, thank you.
I just had one question as well, if you don't mind, homeowners. So the gentleman that was let go was an unlicensed contractor who pulled your permits and is your historic expert, who was also a partner with your current licensed contractor. Is that correct?
No.
No.
So he was partners apparently. Well, this is how I understand it now. I didn't understand at the time. So Alexa Homes is who we contracted with. That was a partnership. Now we were working with the individual apparently that wasn't the contracted partner or the licensed partner. I never met the licensed partner. But they split ways about 4 months into the project and did not let us know that now they didn't have a license as they were working on this property.
So
And
the unlicensed contractor was the cited historic expert. Is that who you're referencing? Okay.
A historic expert.
I'm seeing
I don't
heads
know,
nod.
but had worked with, so our requirements, and I asked him these questions leading up to me hiring him in the first place. You know, obviously, do you have a license? Yes.
Saw it.
Our requirement is that you're going to need to work with the city for building permits and with the historical society because this is an historic home. Is there a problem with that? No. So he checked the boxes and we moved on. Apparently 4 months, 5 months into the project, he and his partner split and his partner was the one with the license.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If I may ask then, so now Mr. Clayton is the general contractor. At what point did he come onto the project?
Sorry. Yeah, so he was hired when we fired or let go, I guess, Daniel. And so that's would have
2
been
months ago,
about 2 months ago. Yeah.
3 months ago, in that range.
Okay, thank you.
We got his license. It wasn't very long ago.
So Steve is someone that we've worked on other projects with, as we've mentioned before. Our bread and butter are cosmetic flips, things that we don't need to change structural stuff on. And so, you know, up until just a few months ago, Steve was a handyman. And actually, the real push for Steve to get his license was so that he could take over this project because the previous contractor was failing in his responsibilities.
Last thing I do want to say is if anybody does watch our show or anything like that, we are actually history buffs. We love, that's our favorite part about what we do is actually taking these old homes or any rundown home, frankly, that's an eyesore that's causing meth, you know, it's a meth home or it's a mold home and it's a horrible eyesore to this community, right? It's investors like us that do care that is changing the face of the community. And I don't want, you know, I want to be able to do this. I want the people who have also partnered up with us to want to continue to keep wanting to make a difference in the community. Obviously, we did it wrong. I get that. We totally failed miserably on this property. I'll take complete responsibility on that. I should have known those things. I absolutely should have been following up with more. I should have gone to the website and figured out who was on the licensee, who was being, in control. I should have seen the license in the window. I should, there's so many things that, yes, red flags galore. I honestly just wasn't present. I was busy doing other things. So I'm sorry. Again, this is my
We really are sad to have to be here at this point asking for forgiveness because our intention was that permission should have been asked in the first place.
Absolutely.
I would just say, just as I guess a cautionary advice, just that if you are putting money into this, that you should know, that your permits are pulled, that you should be involved in the Historic Landmark Commission meetings, that that those things are happening. Just get your fingers in a little bit more. I'll just throw that out there just as a cautionary piece of advice.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
So let me ask the owners as well. during the course of construction, were you watching it? Were you, are you here, or where do you guys live? And, were you watching this construction during the time frame?
Yeah, absolutely. We live in Layton, Utah. And so it's a 20-minute drive for us. We do have other projects in Salt Lake County. A lot of our projects right now are in Weber County. But yeah, we're there at least once a week at every one of our projects, checking in. Communication, especially at first, was great. But we were being told that things were being done that weren't being done. And I think that's where, it was a misplaced trust in the contractor. And, to Ms. Ma's point, I think that's very good advice. And, we should have not trusted as much and had our pulse on, checking more what was being done with the city and with the historical commission.
And honestly, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like up until we started working with Ogden City, I didn't know we could be a part of these meetings. So that is new. That was a new thing for me. Grateful to be here.
I would just say be as nosy as you can.
I love that. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chairperson Vila, this is a Historic Landmarks Commission meeting, and we're not really charged with the cost of things or the economics of it, or all of the social aspects of or contractual aspects of it. We're concerned with the historical aspects of the project. And I would like to move that we close the public session and enter into
Commissioner Richardson,
executive session.
before we do that, are we allowed to ask staff questions during executive session?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you just said, David, and that's why I read what I did right at the beginning, that what our charge is as a commission is to make recommendations to the city council on policy and ordinances related to preservation in Salt Lake City. That's what we're charged to do. That's the number one thing. And so I appreciate what you just said, because it's just, we are responsible for reviewing and making decisions on land use and modifications, everything that happens in these districts. That's what we're bound to do. So
Well,
at this point,
my motion, yeah.
yeah, and at this point, if there's no other questions, I move that we move into executive session. Okay. All right. There's a lot to unpack here. David, would you like to start?
Well, I'm happy to, and I wouldn't mind following up at the end, but this is my neighborhood, and to a large degree as an architect, this is my business. And I think that this project in many ways is an enforcement issue, is so egregious that there has been a lot that is lost in the detail. And I'm going to try and describe some of my comments here about that. I mean, and the first is the elephant in the room, which is this dormer, and it is absolutely too big. Not only is it larger than the underlying zoning ordinance allows for, but it is ugly and it is not historically appropriate. I really don't care if it has a dormer roof or a hip roof. It is just too big. Now, the argument has been made that it needs to be big because of the stair and the way that the stair accesses the previously unused attic. I think that the drawings that we shown, even though we have not been shown the architectural permit drawings, the drawings shown tonight would make it appear as though this, actually, I'm going to add to that, the applicant said that the dormer was not required. And I think that the applicant's statement that the dormer was not necessary and the architectural drawings that we've been shown would suggest that this dormer either is not necessary or could be significantly reduced in size to where it is historically appropriate and meets Salt Lake City codes. Now to the windows and the north side windows and the east side windows, including the front door. When I visited, there appeared to be a temporary door in place inside of a brand new door frame, modern door frame with seals and all that. I actually think the door that's in there now, even though it's not painted like the rest of the house, is the door that's there now is, in my opinion, appropriate. But I have, back to details, tremendous issue with the details of the front door. And I have pictures here tonight, but I'm not able to show them. But the detailing of the exterior of the house has wonderful rosettes, plinths, and window trim all around the windows on the south side of the house. And if those details are reproduced on the east side and the north side, it would be historically appropriate. Instead, what I saw when I visited this house was inappropriately sized trim. The door casing is much larger than the original. I'd outsized the plinths on the door and the rosettes on the door, rather. And on the north side of the house, there were these little teeny tiny Home Depot style rosettes with big trims surrounding vinyl windows. Staff is correct. The windows on the east side and the north side should not be vinyl. They should be historically appropriate. And I will add to that, they should be historically trimmed and cased to match the windows on the south side of the house. As for the roof, we all have asphalt shingles. The asphalt shingles on the roof are the correct color and style and all of that. However, along with staff, I take issue with the soffit and fascia. Staff has noted that the barge board is no longer existent. Well, in addition to the barge board not being existent, the bed moldings, the original soffit and original fascia, and all of those details are completely lost behind an applique of aluminum fascia and soffit. And in my opinion, as a commissioner, the aluminum fascia and soffit are inappropriate for this house. Moving on and to close, there are multiple sidings on this house. The original siding is wonderful, and the applicant should be commended for discovering and restoring this siding. I do not know if they contacted the Division of Air Quality before removing asbestos, but the siding that's there is wonderful and should be celebrated. And I think the applicant should choose one or two additional sidings to complete the project with, not the Pollyanna of sidings that exist. So I'm going to rest my case with an architectural observation, which is that the existing basement window sills do not meet the code, and that the building department may want to have a look at that.
Very good.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, no, thank you very much. John, we haven't heard from you tonight. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
When we have enforcement cases, I usually go from the jumping off point of would this have been approved if it had gone through the proper process? And you know, I think in this case the answer is probably no on the dormer. So I guess the mea culpa was, I heard it, but at the same time, like, we aren't, as David stated, we aren't the kind of financial commission. We're the Historic Landmark Commission. So, that's kind of my issue there. The siding looks great. I agree. Like, most of the changes are positive. They reintroduced a lot of the historic look of the house. It's hard not to be frustrated though, and it's a flipper who's coming in from out of the city and kind of, like it's our city's shared heritage that in people's haste for a quick flip are changing, and it doesn't sit right, obviously. I'll leave it there.
Very good. Thank you, John.
John,
Here,
can
here,
I
John.
follow up? Since I'm not an architect here, what would have been acceptable if someone had come and said, we need to add a dormer somewhere for the purpose of some stairs? Can anyone give me an idea of what would have conformed more to code?
Well, I can.
A staff response, really.
We can give a staff response. I mean, dormers,
Okay.
I mean, you see dormers in the neighborhood because adding dormers are absolutely appropriate when they're appropriately sized, when they're hopefully pushed back. I mean, and
This roof
I have
is
a terrible feedback somewhere. Go ahead.
Victoria?
So this roof is really making the best of a pretty tragic situation in terms of what would have been approved. It is in no way comparable to what would have been best practices for historical home redevelopment.
Right, which is why we're recommending approval, because as terrible as this situation is, had this come in, it doesn't meet the standards, so we can't bring it to you and say that it does in good faith.
One thing that I wanted to point out very earlier in the presentation was looking at the head height of the windows. We know that head heights are typically 6'8", which by code is what the bare minimum head height is. There is not any reason for that dormer roof to not have hit head height at 6'8" and even come in lower to meet, I think, what staff was talking about, where it's too, it's too prominent, it's too big. There was definitely a way, which we didn't see tonight, where that dormer, had the dormer been proposed before it was built, that dormer could have been proposed to come in at a lower profile that would have been less of an eyesore, I think.
Jessica Richardson here. I completely agree with that. And we just don't have enough data to review it.
With that being said, I mean, and I'm not trying to stifle conversation on this, but with that being said, it was in the staff report that potentially the dormer is tabled because I think maybe, staff correct me, but I think maybe the reason that was proposed was because there was a lacking of information, the plans. I think we all agree on that there's not a lot of information there. I think we could have benefited from having seen a few other options, or, another option at least. But I think where it's at right now, I don't feel comfortable approving it. I feel like there was, and if I may, I want to sort of backtrack a little bit as far as the applicant's, obligations and where it, falls with their contractor. Obviously it sounds like their contractor, they put a lot of faith into their contractor to do what, should have been done. But again, we're not the financial committee, but they need to try to potentially figure that out on their own. How is this going to get fixed? Come up with another option, propose something different, show us something else.
And for the benefit of the Landmark Commission, if I could respond to that, generally, these enforcement cases, quite frankly, they require a large amount of human resource in the planning division that's already quite strapped. Because we're lucky we have what we have at most meetings when we bring these to you. Either because there's a money issue, you have to hire an architect, owners generally don't want to do that.
Well, with that being said, Michaela, I feel like that this then, with precedent, everything that all of my fellow commissioners have talked about, that unfortunately this is not this falls back to the owners. I feel like
Right.
that they unfortunately, I feel like, need to come up with a solution that's going to satisfy the design criteria. Unfortunately, as I stated earlier, you can't come and ask for forgiveness. This needs to have been done the appropriate way. And we're not involved in the relationship with the client and their contractor. Unfortunately,
Right.
it seems to me that it falls back to them to figure that out.
That's
So
correct.
I want to go back to two comments, one that Victoria made and then a comment that David made. Victoria, if it had gone through the proper channels and a dormer, wherever the dormer was proposed, then we would have been able to say it either meets the criteria in terms of width, height, and relationship to the building or not. It was, quote, too big, too small, whatever. But there's criteria at an elevation as to how big a dormer can be. That's one thing. If we would have had an opportunity to say, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, in this case, this looks too big. This doesn't meet the requirements, period. So you need to look at the positioning of the stair to push that back from the exterior wall. And as Jessica said, the head height, 6'8" is a code minimum, period. Looking at some of those photographs, it looks like, no, it hasn't been met. So there's a number of sins that have happened. And the point that I wanted to make that David said is that there are requirements. So had this gone through appropriately, it would have been flagged and a dormer could have been placed, the stair location could have been placed to run along the ridge line as opposed to 90 degrees to the ridge line or further back from the exterior wall so that the landing wouldn't have been pushed to the exterior. Does that answer your question? Okay. The issue was, the issue is that a stair was placed, and as the way the stair was placed and trying to meet the requirements of the landing and the turning, that's what made it as wide as it is, and it is very wide, ginormously wide. Aiden, I haven't heard from you this evening. Would you like to comment as well?
Aiden sent out an email. She had to scoot out.
Okay, very good. All right.
Check to make sure
I'm ready to put together a motion here if everyone else has spoken their words.
Do it.
Go ahead, David.
Oh, thanks, Babs. So I'm going to preface my motion with 4 observations that will be read into the record and the owner can take home. One is the dormer is too big. The second is vinyl windows are very bad. The third is that the window trim used on the primary facades, that is the north and the east, inappropriate. And the fourth is that the roof soffit and fascia details are very, very bad. Aluminum is not right. So I'm going to go with staff motion number 5. Based on the information listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during our public hearing tonight, I move that the commission deny petition PLNHLC 2020-00940. Minor alterations at 229. I'm going to disagree with that. I don't think these are minor alterations, but the petition is for alterations at 229 North Almond Street because the evidence that has been presented does not demonstrate that the proposal complies with the historical standards of Salt Lake City. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second with no edits.
Thank you.
Are there additional comments or modifications? All right, let's go in order then. Babs,
Move to deny.
John,
Yes to David's motion.
very good. Jessica,
Aye.
Victoria,
I have to go aye. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Victoria, I couldn't hear you very well.
I have to support David's motion. Aye. I'm sorry.
Very good. Good. And then David,
Aye, thank you.
very good. All right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Denying our, denying the approval in accordance with the motion that was made by David Richardson.
Oh, okay, Mike, and I think you have something to read about
Appeal periods.
appeals and so on, yeah. Or Michaela can read it for you.
Yes,
So
please.
as I can just tell the applicant if they have any questions, they can work with Katja, but you have 30 days as an applicant to appeal the Historic Landmark Commission's decision to the appeals hearing officer.
And again, it's a historic district. And I think the word historic is in bold, and that if you're going to work and rehab in the historic district, better know the rules backwards and forwards. And the second, for example, you see vinyl, run. That's just one of many, many things helping to protect our historic district's integrity is by protecting from things like vinyl and chimneys being taken down and the wrong dormers put on. So welcome to the neighborhood, but play by the rules. Sorry about your contractor.
Well, and I'd like to add to that, Babs, that I mean, I'm an architect as well, and I just hate wasting money. And I see that there's an issue with a contractor that was not doing what they were supposed to, and I'm struggling with how to place the blame where it needs to be financially, and that this kind of thing just simply doesn't happen. Now I understand buyer beware. I think these folks were trying to do what was right. Perhaps it was a bigger project than they had taken on previously, but there's the notion of how a contractor works and how he's held accountable, to an owner, to a city. I think that's something that perhaps we address in our sessions, running into the future, because this is not the first time that an owner has been told a story that wasn't so, and we seem to get one or two of these a year that is at issue. Yes, David.
Mike, while the camera's still rolling, it appeared as though either in our presentation tonight or through information that was given to us through public comment, that there were architectural drawings involved in the permitting of this project. And as an architect, I don't want to point fingers at other architects, but it would appear to me that there are professional issues at stake here. And the owner may or may not have recourse in that direction, but my head is bowed for whether this was an architect or a designer presenting themselves as an architect, as was shown on YouTube I visited. There are still professional issues here, and there are professional licensing boards in the state of Utah that protect sanctity of those that do stamp drawings and present them for permits. So
I
didn't want to
very
say
much
that.
agree with that. You know, there had to have been a structural stamp. There was an architectural stamp, and those there's rules, and when I look at this and I hear this is a train wreck in several different directions. And you know, I feel for the owners, and yet at the same time, there's professional, both on the contracting side and whoever prepared these plans, architecturally, structurally, because I believe both of those were required. Those are at issue, and they need to be held accountable as to what they did or didn't do, or what they saw or didn't see. So somehow there's a big disconnect, you know, in 2 or 3 different sides.
Yeah, you're spot on. It appears that the applicant has dropped off our conversation, but
I put them in the attendees list because we made
oh, okay.
the decision.
But just the same, you know, these are important issues, and for those of us that are professionals and work in the community and are here to support the community and make this a safe and lovely place to be. It's Mike.
Well, I would like to add to that, I brought up the point about the structural engineering being needed for the dormer, and it sounds like what the applicants were saying was that this change was made without it even being approved. It didn't go through the city. I think this goes back to something that we have discussed many times, as we all have brought up now, that unfortunately this seems to keep happening. And this was something that we brought up a while back, that what, you know, how in the world are we supposed to protect the residents? You know, and I honestly have to say, I feel for the buyers. You know, especially being in a position now where I'm selling my home and I'm trying to sell my home to somebody that's going to live in the community and appreciate the community. You know, and a lot of investors coming in and things like that. You know, how do we protect the community? And especially where you have these quote unquote professionals that are that say they care but don't. You know how, and again, as we've discussed previously, this falls somewhat in our purview, but a lot outside of our purview. How in the world does the city protect the buyers, the residents, from what I would say, maybe this is a little bit inflammatory, but from predatory contractors, or, you know, it's unfortunate. This is a very unfortunate situation.
Yes, it's
Additionally, I would like to point out that our commission is under repeated scrutiny because we're appointed, and it's considered maybe not democratic, or people don't like it, and our legislature is one of the top advocates for restricting the authority and oversight of commissions like ours. And when we're forced into positions of enforcement like this, it really does harm what we do. We are going to be targets for elimination or for restriction of our activity, because it appears as though we're inflicting financial burden on investors, when in fact a poorly executed contract is what caused this to happen. And it should not be that we have to choose between investors being able to do what they do and turn the profit that they intend to turn, or that the combined history of our city is protected. That's a very, very terrible choice to make. And I am worried about the socio-political ramifications of having to do things like this repeatedly.
100% agree with you, Victoria. That is exactly a good summarization of what I was trying to say. I agree with you.
You know, Victoria, you are spot on. In fact, that is a sound bite to be reported or used if our city attorney or our legislative folks need to use that at the legislature. I think you verbalized that perfectly. That is the challenge of this commission, and the way you stated that and read it into the record tonight is, oh my gosh, I wish I had your eloquence. Thank you.
It pays to have the arts and humanities represented on commissions.
All right. Michaela, I failed to have that comment, you know, the appeal of the Historic Landmark Commission decision.
Okay.
Do I need to read that formally, or what you read was sufficient?
I can ask our attorney if,
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
no requirement to advise them of the appeal rights. Everyone is on notice of that by virtue of being in our code. So
right.
it's just like a friendly gesture to mention that to the applicant, but not legally required.
All right, very good.
And just for the applicant and all the other parties intertwined with this case, our staff planner will send out a pretty detailed letter to you in the next couple days, what occurred tonight and other courtesy information. Thanks, but we're not
Very
done.
good.
Just
Very good.
to let you know, the most riveting part of the evening is coming up.
I was just going to get to that. I know that our next item is a work session, revisions to the rules of procedure document.
I'm so excited about this, Mike.
As am I.
Katya would like to speak, I think.
So if the commission doesn't mind, I'm going to read my entire memo and go through 38 pages of policies and procedures.
Can I ask a question to David before, you know, this item is completely gone? When you say vinyl is bad, are you talking about all the windows in each elevation?
Well, the comment was meant to be all encompassing, that vinyl windows and vinyl siding are bad. However, while we're still on the record, my personal opinion is vinyl windows on the lower story below the basement level of a house are actually a good idea. Vinyl windows in the back of the house, I'm going to leave that to you as staff.
And we do approve those.
Right. And at that point, it becomes a function of the style of window. Is it a slider? Is it a casement? Does it look like a double hung? And how is the window cased? How does the window casing relate to the siding? So, does that answer your question, Katja?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And back to what I said originally, I think vinyl windows below grade in the basement elevation are an absolute no-brainer. I love to restore wood windows below grade, but lots of friends live down there and they don't live very long.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you so much.
We can discuss that in, thank
That's
you.
a great staff issue.
Thank you so much.
Windows, always struggling with windows.
Windows, masonry, roofs. I mean, they're just four basic things in our historical world on the residential side. Commercial side gets more complicated, as we know.
Thank you. All right, folks. Are you ready to move to policies and procedures?
Yes, ma'am.
Look, it's all in your packet. I know that you've read it. We're updating our commission's policies and procedures because they haven't been updated for almost a decade. So they needed a fresh look. And in my memo, I basically just go through, we wanted to, first of all, just change them to policies and procedures, address commission training, state law. Most of them are very minor edits. I checked the code citations. There were lots of code citations that we've had so many text amendments that they were completely incorrect. We tried to reflect our current practices of emailing now because we probably didn't do that quite as much back in 2012, 2013. It addresses the planner's record of decision letter that I was discussing that Katja would send to her applicant, or that all of our planners send to the applicants. I did delete a large section about accepting surveys, an RLS survey, an ILS, because we have a current text amendment running right now that's been initiated that Amy Thompson is working on in our office, basically laying that out in the zoning ordinance officially. So we have official record, official process, official factors to consider, and standards. That's a more appropriate place to put that rather than policies and procedures. Or challenging the status of a property, right? That's a question. The survey says this, I don't think that it's actually contributing, or vice versa. We get questions, I need to get tax credits, I'm going to do these changes, I'd like to be considered contributing. The same process would apply. And I have my policies and procedures document. I can go ahead and share it. Do you have any issues? How would you like me to run this, Mr. Chair? Go ahead.
Excuse me. I think if you run through the highlights of all the documents that you transmitted, Michaela, I think that would be fine.
Those are the highlights. Those are the
Okay.
riveting highlights.
Very good. Well,
I would like to hear the highlights and changes, and maybe we already have. It's a well-crafted document.
Say that again?
It is a well-crafted document. Maybe you've already highlighted the changes, but maybe perhaps highlight the highlights or something.
Okay, I'll just go right through. Organization, there's some new, the state law has, the state just put some new requirements in for the planning commission. So I just kept it open in case state law changes and requires the Landmark Commission to do any training, so that we don't have to update these if next session they decide you need 1 hour a year, and then the next session they decide you need 17 hours a year.
Michaela, just seeing your document underlying changes compared to what I printed from the packet is enormously helpful. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Just some wordsmithing that Hannah helped me with as well. Some wordsmithing here. There was some kooky language here saying that the chair authenticates by signature all of the commission's fact findings and orders. We have never done that. I wanted to perhaps strike it, but the attorney's office said, suggested this language that to serve as a signatory, that the chair could sign documents that might be required by law, or otherwise you feel as a commission need to be signed, rather than every single action that you take. getting rid of bad citations, getting rid of bad citations, and referencing state law. Just cleanup of language to make it clearer. I added in a little bit of language here under conflict of interest. I know that you were all blown up on conflicts of interest. But one important thing was, we still don't want to talk about items during an appeal period. So I added that in just as a reminder that we don't want to talk about a matter that's coming up in front of the commission, but there's still that appeal period of 30 days that one would want to be not discussing a matter. All the rest of the conflict information is there. I added in work session. We didn't have that there. That all the conflict rules apply to a work session as well, because it's still a matter that's coming up. We did address some electronic meetings, because of COVID. Let's put it in there, how they're conducted, and just referenced those. Special meetings, we may amend our agenda 24 hours in advance, and we would let you know via email. Just a little bit more wordsmithing on our order of business, that we generally follow this particular order. Submission of written material, when we get you that written material, that we email it or hand it out to you, is reasonably practical. That's just reflecting our current practices and that you get them in your Dropbox. But also, if something comes in right at the last minute, or an applicant wants to give you something at the last minute and they submit it to us, they would want to know that you may or may not see it before the meeting, out of practicality. Minutes, we try to approve them at the next meeting. Let's see, just change language from community council, because our because our city code actually calls community councils and other organizations that register with the recorder's office recognized community organizations. So just trying to make sure that nomenclature matches the code. That we provide a motion sheet. No member of the commission is permitted to vote on any motion unless the member is present. Just more of that. I changed them to your rules of procedure to policies and procedures, just because that's also what the city code calls it. I'm referencing, we used to call it the record of decision. Now we call it the summary of actions, which we think is a better title. And we will post that tomorrow. So Aubrey or Marlene always post that out. You see it come through our listserv. Again, a little bit more wordsmithing on what the planner sends to the applicant. Even though that's already in the code, this is a little bit of a courtesy, because applicants do read our rules and procedures, so they know it's coming. We don't really, we're holding more work sessions because it's on the record, and I think we've collectively decided that it's better to do the public's work in the public rather than architectural subcommittee meetings, although we could still hold those if you wanted to hold them. But there was some reference language that an architectural subcommittee actually sends a recommendation to the commission. They do not and should not. We would provide you minutes of, and so I struck recommendation and said any minutes of an architectural committee would be given to you. Let's see. Nothing with that. Here's the deletion of the historic surveys process. Any changes to the policies and procedures you all have to make. As staff, we can't just go ahead and change them. You need to provide a motion tonight, or if you're not comfortable with doing it tonight to make these changes, I can bring back this document at the next meeting. It's completely up to you.
Well,
That's all.
yeah, Michaela, I'll just say that, you know, that everything I read, I found this document extremely helpful. The wordsmithing was fine, but you know, the deletions of things that just didn't make any sense anymore. I do like what is in the very first paragraph, that, you know, additional training, you know, as needed. And I'm very cognizant of the fact that and I'm willing to and yearn honestly to have the training, so that we don't waste any time, that anything that we do, we're not doing incorrectly, that then has to go, you know, that is countermanded by city council, or, you know, as it moves up the chain. And so I want to make certain that everything that we do is everything that it's supposed to be. And so I guess what I'm just saying is that the education part, I'm very, very willing to participate in that, because I think it's our duty to do everything the way we're supposed to. So far in my time on the commission, I don't believe there's been any cases that have, quote, been overturned, that the decisions that we've made, you know, haven't been problematic. And I go back to what, you know, our legal counsel had said, that's an important aspect.
It's important that we lay out our staff reports and that you discuss these in detail. The Landmark Commission isn't appealed very often. When you are appealed, you are generally never overturned by an appeals hearing officer. The Planning Commission is appealed so much more often. And they're overturned more than you are overturned as a body.
Right.
But they're appealed
It's a different deal.
quite a bit.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that.
Right.
Do we need a motion on this?
That you can discuss, you can, if you'd like to adopt them tonight, yes, I need you to make a motion
Sorry.
and vote.
Can I just interject? This is
Yeah.
Hannah.
Yes, Hannah.
I did notice this was on the agenda as a work meeting
Session.
or something.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It was a work session.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good point.
Absence
So
of
we can't vote.
language, you know, notifying the public that we could take action on work meetings, I am kind of inclined to recommend we not vote on it tonight.
Great. That's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, Michaela. Sorry.
So then Hannah, would this then become an item that we do vote on in the next meeting?
Certainly, and we'll just make sure that that's clearly noticed as an action item.
Now,
Very good.
Hannah,
See how great Hannah is?
Hannah, the great Hannah. Since we've discussed it in tonight's session, could this be part of a consent agenda on our next, at our next meeting?
Certainly.
We have to go to full on comments and all of that.
No, if you're comfortable, that would be an appropriate motion today to move it to a consent agenda.
Okay, well, I'm going to move in that direction. But I'd like to make one comment, and that is that Michaela's observation as she's wordsmithing this, that at one point in time there were these architectural subcommittees that met in private and did stuff and came, presented a little bit of a challenge for public process. I personally think that the way we hold work sessions, which are a good thing, should include a little bit of public process. And I think it would be useful for the applicants to hear what people from the public have in work sessions. And And in truly opening up the process away from these secret design committees to open work sessions, that maybe we can find a vehicle to do that. But that said, I move that we approve this in a consent agenda next month.
Is there a second to that?
Do we have to have a motion on this? Sorry, point of order.
Maybe not.
Because it's assent?
Uh-huh.
Fair enough.
Okay, then I move we adjourn.
Oh, second.
All right. Very good. And Babs, as always, I agree with you. Let's close this meeting this evening. Thank you, everyone.
We'll see
Appreciate
you
it.
all downtown or next month.
All right.
Gosh, I hope so.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you and goodbye, Jessica.
Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We're gonna miss you.